Hi, my name's Ruth Nikovich and I'm a librarian here at Queensland Parliament. I'm joined today by two very special guests, Bill Kitson and Kay Nardella of the Queensland Museum of Lands, Mapping and Surveying. Our guests are here today to talk about some of these beautiful Queensland maps that have recently been restored as part of the Queensland Parliament's Heritage Conservation Program, which has been coordinated through the Parliamentary Library.
Yeah, well, of course, maps generally are created for a purpose. They're not just something nice they do for the country. Administrative maps, you get topographic maps for warfare, you get main roads maps, hydrographic charts for the coast. Maps come in various forms, but they're always head in a different direction. This one here, of course, is the electoral boundaries, isn't it?
And this map was created by Thomas Ham.
And Ham often published in the post office directories. What's that big thing? You know, that big volume. He published a map of Queensland showing the southern boundary.
Pew's Almanac?
Pew's Almanac, that's it, yeah.
And how would they have produced these maps, Bill?
These are done on Bavarian limestone. It's a Neolithic limestone. And the Surveyor General would order from Bavaria and other places, England, these big blocks of limestone about that thick, that size, which we've got a couple of, and then they'd put the surface nice and level and totally clean. For the lack of a better worker, they got their Black & Decker sander out and went zzz all over it, made it perfectly smooth, on which the cartographers would put the image of the map they wanted to reproduce from their sources, whether the survey plans. They'd take that information, compile it at a certain scale and put it on that stone in reverse, because those images on the stone have to be ink added on top, put a bit of paper on top and pull it off, and it's the right way round.
And this map is really special because it's a Thomas Ham map of Queensland 1871, and it's been used as a base. And someone, I would think maybe the Survey Office cartographers, has annotated this map with the boundaries for electoral districts at a point in time. And there are references, and I'm assuming that there's a list somewhere that says like number 42 is Cook or Burke. Mm-hmm. So it's capturing the location. On one map, it's capturing the administrative boundaries of the electoral boundaries, which is really, really valuable for anyone doing historical research on Queensland to know where these boundaries are at a point of time. And these maps are really valuable historically because at this time of the map, 1871, you can see areas where there hasn't been exploration. So there are gaps, and there would be similar maps of Queensland at later dates, such as the map that we have over here that's dated 1898. And again, you can see what's the development and how Queensland is being, the exploration of Queensland is occurring through time, through our map focus. So it's really important to have copies of maps showing the similar area through time.
It's a record, it's a diary of history.
I'd just like to talk about this map. It's a map of Queensland dated 1898. And what I find really interesting about this map is that it's showing the shipping routes, so the mail routes. So in 1898, when you look at this map, we do have railways, but the majority of the railways are going inland. If you wanted to go from Brisbane to Cairns, the way to do that was by boat. So this map is capturing the actual path that the ships travelled. And again, it's a really interesting map because it puts Queensland in relation to Australia and also the world with the shipping routes that were used. So it captures the point of time when, if you wanted to travel from one part from the bottom of Queensland to the top, the only way that you could do it was by ship. So that's the story that this map tells. I think the maps that you have that have electoral boundaries annotated on them, I would think that they're unique, because there are copies. I have seen copies of the base map, but I have not seen a map of Queensland showing electoral boundaries for these particular times. So no, I believe those two maps, the map underneath, are very, very valuable.
Certainly. We've had most of our inquiries come from family historians and related to maps, rather than geologists saying, I'm trying to find a lithium mine here or something. You know what I mean? Or a boatie saying, I'm going fishing in the Hinchinbrook Channel or something. So the great demand for the last 20 years has been from people doing family history. The other source, of course, is researchers doing theses and university research and stuff on something.
I see the value of these maps. They capture points in time in Queensland, and they also, through the maps, you can track the development, you can track the changes in Queensland, where the railways have been developed, where the railways have been closed, how land has been split up, the features, how the built features, so where towns have been located, and how the coastline has changed through time. Again, you can capture that information from our maps. And our maps also can tell stories. They can tell you stories like, for instance, I've viewed an 1897 map over the Brisbane area, and it was showing that there was an area that's now Stafford. It was called Happy Valley, and there was Happy Valley roads. So our maps can tell stories. I'd just like to talk about this map. It's a Brisbane and suburbs map, we think dated 1951. And this is a really interesting map because, again, it captures information about what was happening in Brisbane at that time. This is where we can see, even by this stage, there's still a Happy Valley Road, which is now called Stafford Road. This map shows that there's a baby clinic area. It's also showing that there were lots of tennis clubs in Brisbane at this time. And it shows the routes of the trams and the tram stations. So that's how people in the 1950s, that's how they moved around Queensland. It's showing where the wharves were right up until South Brisbane area, because now the majority of the wharf area is at Fisherman's Island. So you can look at this map and just get a really good idea of what was happening in Brisbane. And you can see where estates were developing because of the road patterns that are shown on this map. And you can see where the parks and reserves were, Victoria Park. And I'm sure it'd show the ECA, it's the exhibition grounds and the exhibition stations. And it's interesting, at this stage in the 1950s, there was a rail line through Woolloongabba, so it connected down there. And we have people who contact us sometimes to say, where is the tunnel that this Woolloongabba train line went through? And it's marked on our survey plans, and I'm sure it's marked on some of the maps that we hold. So it's just interesting. Oh, and the other interesting thing about this map, it tells us a lot about how the river was being used. Because in the 1950s, the rivers, the ferries were across the river. I can't find any evidence that there were ferries going up and down the river, but you could definitely cross from Bulimba from Newstead to Bulimba, and there's lots of ferry crossings. I think they would have been interested in the collections of these maps because it allowed them to make decisions. It allowed them to help with their planning. It allowed them to help their constituents if they had any questions.
It'd be a more consistent thing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So yes, they would have needed this information to help determine what direction they were hoping Queensland could take. They form a really important base to allow you to make decisions and make wise decisions.
When we handle place names inquiries and things like that, naming of things, what we basically do is go through every map that we know in existence over that area and find out what map that name first appears on. And once you've got that done, you can try and figure out who named it and why and blah, blah, blah. But you need a basic say, that map shows that name's existence 1862. So yeah, very handy tool for that sort of stuff. The maps are used by different people for different purposes, and over the years it's changed considerably. In the old days you had engineers and architects using maps Architects would get a map of early Brisbane where the creeks were, and he'd know now not to put buildings there. Engineers would know how to build a road off maps. Today, family historians and people doing general history use maps more than the architects and engineers and people like that. So over the years, the usage has changed, but it certainly had a lot of different usages.
And the value that the value doesn't change. They're valuable when they're created for that particular purpose, and then as time goes by, people can find different reasons to use those maps. So I can see permanent value in our historical maps because they capture time and they capture change, and they just have a snapshot of what the Queensland looked like. So they're a very, very important resource and should be preserved. The collection of maps that you have is very, very important. They're important because you have unique maps. These are the only copies of these maps that have these annotations. You also have maps that are in really good condition, which is important, but it's also, if you have, I know you have maps in your collection that are in not very good condition. It is very important to conserve those, because by conserving them, you can make them available to the wider world so others can share in the value of those maps.
Well, I'd like to thank our guests for coming here today and sharing some of their stories and information about these incredible Queensland maps that we have here in our collection at the Parliamentary Library.